Captain Ben Torres stood at the viewing window of the transport ship Harmony, watching the crystal moon of Velthora grow larger before them. The surface sparkled like a giant diamond against the dark space around it. He had never seen anything so beautiful in all his years traveling through the galaxy. Captain Torres called his assistant, Lisa. "We will arrive at the palace in 30 minutes. The Velthoran officials are waiting for you." Ben nodded and straightened his formal blue uniform. This was the most important mission of his career. Earth needed trade partners, and the Velthoran Empire controlled the richest mining systems in this part of the galaxy. If he could make a good impression today, it would help both civilizations. The ship landed softly on a platform made of smooth white stone. Ben looked out and saw tall, graceful beings waiting for him. The Velthorans looked almost human, but their skin had beautiful scales that changed colors in the light. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, and they moved with fluid grace. "Remember, Captain," Lisa said as they prepared to leave the ship. "Bow when you meet the royal family. Don't touch anything unless they offer it to you. And whatever happens, stay calm." Ben smiled. "Don't worry. I've studied their culture for months. How hard can it be to not cause a diplomatic incident?" The doors of the ship opened, and Ben stepped onto Velthoran soil for the first time. The air smelled like flowers and something sweet he couldn't identify. The gravity was lighter here, making each step feel like floating. A tall Velthoran with golden scales approached them. His scales shimmered as he moved, creating patterns of light across his skin. "Welcome, Captain Torres of Earth. I am High Advisor Zen. We are honored by your visit." Ben bowed respectfully. "The honor is mine, High Advisor. Earth is grateful for this opportunity to meet with your people." Zen gestured toward a magnificent building that rose like a crystal mountain from the surface of the moon. "Come. The royal family awaits you in the Palace of Stars. Today is very special for our people." As they walked toward the palace, Ben noticed hundreds of Velthorans gathering along their path. They wore flowing robes in bright colors, and their scales reflected the light from their two suns. Many held small crystal chimes that made soft, musical sounds in the breeze. "Is there a celebration today?" Ben asked. Zen's scales shifted to a deeper gold color. "Today is the choosing ceremony. It happens once every 7 years. Princess Kira will participate in the ancient ritual that has guided our royal family for 1,000 generations." Ben was curious but didn't want to ask too many questions. He had read about Velthoran ceremonies in his preparation, but many details were kept private from outsiders. The palace doors were 20 feet tall and made from clear crystal that showed rainbows when the light hit them. As they passed through, Ben gasped. The inside of the palace was even more beautiful than the outside. Crystal formations grew from the walls and ceiling, creating natural artwork that sparkled in every direction. "The royal family is gathering in the ceremony hall," Zen explained as they walked through corridors lined with flowing water features. "You will be presented to them before the ritual begins." They entered a vast circular room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars above. In the center of the room was a raised platform made from pure white stone. Dozens of Velthorans in elaborate robes stood around the edges of the room, all watching the platform expectantly. At one side of the room sat 3 figures on crystal thrones. Ben recognized them immediately as the royal family. King Aldris had deep blue scales and wore a crown that looked like it was made from captured starlight. Queen Nala's scales were silver and white, and she moved with elegant grace. Between them sat Princess Kira. Ben stared for a moment before remembering his manners. Princess Kira was the most beautiful being he had ever seen. Her scales were a soft purple that shifted to pink and gold as she moved. Her large eyes were the color of amethyst, and when she looked at him, Ben felt his heart skip a beat. "Approach the throne," Zen whispered. Ben walked forward and bowed deeply. "Your Majesties, I am Captain Ben Torres, representing Earth and humanity. We come in friendship, hoping to build a lasting relationship between our peoples." King Aldris stood and spoke in a voice that echoed through the hall. "Welcome, Captain Torres. Your reputation as a fair and honest leader has reached even our distant world. We hope today marks the beginning of a new friendship between Earth and Velthora." "The ceremony will begin now," Queen Nala announced. "Captain Torres, you are welcome to observe this sacred tradition of our people." Princess Kira stood and walked gracefully to the platform in the center of the room. She wore a flowing gown that seemed to be made from liquid starlight. As she moved, her scales caught the light from above, creating beautiful patterns across her dress. Ben watched, fascinated, as the ceremony began. The Velthorans around the room began to sing in harmony, their voices creating a sound like wind through crystal caves. Princess Kira stood in the center of the platform and slowly raised her arms toward the stars visible through the crystal dome. The singing grew louder, and the crystal formations in the room began to resonate with the sound, adding their own musical notes to the harmony. Ben had never heard anything so beautiful. He understood why this ceremony was considered sacred. As the music reached its peak, something unexpected happened. Princess Kira began to sway, her eyes closing as she became lost in the rhythm of the ancient song. She took a step backward, then another, moving closer to the edge of the platform. Ben realized with growing alarm that she was going to fall. The platform was raised several feet above the floor, and the Velthorans watching the ceremony seemed too entranced by the music to notice the danger. Without thinking, Ben rushed forward. Just as Princess Kira stepped off the edge of the platform, he caught her in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, and her scales were warm against his skin. The singing stopped immediately. Every Velthoran in the room turned to stare at them with wide eyes. The silence was so complete that Ben could hear his own heartbeat. Princess Kira opened her eyes and looked up at him in surprise. Her amethyst eyes met his brown ones, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Her scales shifted through colors he had never seen before, creating patterns of light across her face. "You caught me," she whispered in perfect English, her voice soft with wonder. "I couldn't let you fall," Ben replied, still holding her carefully in his arms. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. Then King Aldris spoke, his voice carrying a note of amazement that Ben couldn't understand. "By the ancient laws of Velthora, the choosing ceremony is complete." Ben looked around in confusion. The faces of the Velthorans showed a mixture of shock, joy, and something else he couldn't identify. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I don't understand. What choosing ceremony?" High Advisor Zen stepped forward, his golden scales now shimmering with what Ben was beginning to recognize as excitement. "Captain Torres, during the choosing ceremony, when a member of the royal family is caught by someone during the ritual fall, that person has been chosen as their life partner by the will of the stars." Ben felt his knees go weak. Life partner? Princess Kira was still in his arms, her scales now cycling through rapid changes of color. She looked as surprised as Ben felt. "You truly did not know?" she asked. "Know what?" Ben managed to say. Queen Nala stood and approached them, her expression kind but serious. "Captain Torres, by catching Princess Kira during the sacred fall, you have been chosen by cosmic forces to be her life partner. This is the most sacred bond in our culture." Ben gently helped Princess Kira stand, his mind racing. "Your Majesties, I had no idea. I was just trying to prevent her from getting hurt. I meant no disrespect to your traditions." King Aldris smiled, and his scales shifted to a warm golden color. "There is no disrespect, young captain. The ceremony has not been completed by an outsider in over 300 years. Many believe it means our people are destined to be connected." Ben looked at Princess Kira, who was studying him with curious eyes. "But I'm human. I don't even know if this is possible." "The laws are clear," High Advisor Zen announced to the room. "Captain Torres must now enter the courtship period. For one full solar cycle, he must court Princess Kira according to our traditions. At the end of that time, they must decide whether to accept the life partnership or face the consequences of breaking a sacred bond. What consequences? Ben asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. The High Advisor's expression became serious. If the bond is rejected, it will be seen as an insult to our most sacred traditions. Diplomatic relations between Earth and Velthora would be impossible. Both of our peoples would suffer. Ben felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had come here to build a bridge between civilizations, and now he found himself at the center of the most important decision either species might make. He looked again at Princess Kira, who was watching him with an expression of wonder and uncertainty. "Princess, what do you think about all this?" She was quiet for a long moment, her scales shifting through soft purple and blue patterns. Finally, she spoke. "I expected to choose someone from our own people. I never imagined the stars would choose a human." She paused, then added, "But perhaps the universe knows something we do not." King Aldris stepped forward. "The decision has been made by forces beyond our control. Captain Torres, do you accept the courtship period?" Ben thought about his mission, about Earth's need for allies, and about the beautiful princess standing before him. He realized he had no choice, but strangely, the idea didn't frighten him as much as it should have. "I accept," he said. "I will do everything I can to honor your traditions and learn about your culture." The room erupted in musical chimes as the Velthrons expressed their approval. Princess Kira smiled for the first time since he had caught her, and her scales brightened to a warm gold that reminded Ben of sunlight. "Then let the courtship begin," declared King Aldris. "May the stars guide you both toward wisdom and understanding." As the ceremony hall filled with celebration, Ben wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had come to Velthora as a diplomat, but now he found himself in the most important relationship of his life. Looking at Princess Kira's smile, he decided that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected turn of events might lead to something wonderful. The adventure was just beginning. The next morning, Ben woke up in guest quarters that were more beautiful than any hotel he had ever seen on Earth. The walls were made of smooth crystal that glowed softly with morning light. Through the large window, he could see the gardens of the palace, where strange and wonderful plants grew in perfect harmony. A soft chime at his door announced a visitor. "Come in," Ben called. High Advisor Zen entered, carrying a collection of crystal tablets. His golden scales were bright in the morning light. "Good morning, Captain Torres. I trust you slept well." "Very well, thank you," Ben replied, though in truth he had spent most of the night thinking about Princess Kira and the impossible situation he now found himself in. "I have brought materials to help you understand our courtship traditions," Zen explained, setting the tablets on a crystal table. "The next 30 days will determine the future of both our worlds." Ben picked up one of the tablets. Words appeared on its surface in perfect English, describing Velthran customs and social rules. "This is incredible technology. How does it know my language?" "The tablets read your thoughts and translate accordingly," Zen said with what Ben was learning to recognize as Velthran pride. Princess Kira created the translation program herself. She is quite gifted with such things. Ben was impressed. She's a scientist. Among other talents, Princess Kira has studied the languages and cultures of 17 different species. She was very curious about humans even before your arrival. This information made Ben feel slightly better about his situation. At least Princess Kira was interested in learning about other worlds, just as he was. "What should I do first?" Ben asked. "Traditionally, the courtship begins with the exchange of stories," Zen explained. "You and the princess will share the history of your peoples and your personal experiences. This helps determine if your souls are compatible." Ben spent the morning reading the crystal tablets, learning about Velthran history and customs. He discovered that their people had been peaceful traders for over 2,000 years. They valued knowledge, artistic expression, and harmony with nature. Their planet had never known war, which explained why they seemed so trusting and open. At midday, a message arrived asking Ben to meet Princess Kira in the palace gardens. He found her sitting beside a fountain that played music as the water fell. She wore a simple gown that changed color with her movements, shifting from blue to green to purple like the scales on her skin. "Good morning, Captain Torres," she said formally as he approached. "Please, call me Ben," he replied, sitting on the crystal bench beside the fountain. "Captain Torres makes me sound like I'm still on duty." Princess Kira smiled slightly. "Very well, Ben. And you may call me Kira, if you prefer." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the musical fountain. Ben noticed that Kira seemed nervous, her scales shifting through muted colors. "I've been reading about your people," Ben said. "Your history is fascinating. 2,000 years without conflict is remarkable." "What about your people?" Kira asked. "I have heard that humans are quite different from us." Ben thought carefully about how to answer. He wanted to be honest without frightening her. "We haven't always been as peaceful as Veltharans. Humans have struggled with conflict throughout our history. But we've learned to be better. That's why I became a diplomat instead of a soldier." "You were a soldier?" Kira's scales brightened with curiosity. "For a few years, when I was young," Ben admitted. "But I discovered I preferred building bridges to building walls. I wanted to explore space to meet new friends, not new enemies." Kira studied his face carefully. "High Advisor Zen says that humans are very emotional beings. Is this true?" Ben laughed. "Guilty as charged. We feel things very deeply. Is that frightening to you?" "I'm not sure," Kira said honestly. "Veltharans experience emotions, but we express them differently. We show feelings through our scale colors and the songs we sing. Humans seem to show emotions with their faces and voices." "Would you like me to show you?" Ben asked. Kira nodded, her scales shifting to a soft pink that Ben was beginning to associate with interest. "When I'm happy," Ben said, smiling widely, "I look like this. When I'm sad," he let his face fall, "I look like this. When I'm confused," he scrunched up his forehead, "I look like this." Kira watched each expression with fascination. "Your face changes completely. How do you control it?" "Most of the time we don't think about it," Ben explained. "The expressions just happen naturally." "How do you control your scale colors?" "We don't control them either," Kira said, her scales now shifting to bright gold with amusement. "They change based on our feelings, just like your face." Ben realized they were more similar than he had first thought. Maybe we're not so different after all. For the next several days, Ben and Kira spent their mornings together, sharing stories about their worlds and their dreams. Ben learned that Kira loved to study stars and had always wondered what it would be like to travel between worlds. Kira discovered that Ben had dreamed of visiting other planets since he was a child, reading every book about space exploration he could find. "I always imagined what it would be like to meet beings from other worlds," Ben told her one morning as they walked through the crystal gardens. "But I never imagined anyone as beautiful as you." Kira's scales flushed deep pink. "You think I'm beautiful?" "The most beautiful being I've ever seen," Ben said honestly. "When you move, you look like living art." No one had ever described Kira that way before. Veltharan compliments usually focused on intelligence or achievements, not physical beauty. She found herself looking forward to their conversations more each day. On the 10th day of their courtship, Ben noticed that Kira seemed tired. Her usually bright scales had become dull, and she moved more slowly than usual. "Are you feeling well?" he asked as they sat by their usual fountain. "I'm fine," Kira said, but her voice lacked its usual energy. By the next day, it was clear that something was wrong. Kira's scales had lost almost all their color, becoming a pale gray that Ben had never seen before. She could barely walk without assistance. "What's happening to her?" Ben asked High Advisor Zen urgently. Zen's own scales had turned dark with worry. "Princess Kira suffers from scale fade. It's a rare condition that affects some Velthrans when they experience strong emotional stress. Is it dangerous? Ben felt panic rising in his chest. Not dangerous, but difficult, Zen explained. When our scales lose their color, we become weak and tired. Most importantly, it's considered very shameful in our culture. A Velthran without colored scales is thought to be incomplete. Ben was horrified. Shameful. But she can't help being sick. Logic and tradition don't always agree, Zen said sadly. Many of the court members are already saying that the stress of courting a human has caused her condition. They believe she should end the courtship to restore her health. Ben felt anger building inside him. That's ridiculous. Kira is the same wonderful person whether her scales are bright or dull. Zen looked surprised by Ben's passionate response. You would continue the courtship even though she appears weak and unattractive by our standards. Weak? Unattractive? Ben stared at the advisor in disbelief. Kira is the strongest, most intelligent, most beautiful person I've met on any world. Her worth isn't determined by the color of her scales. That afternoon, Ben ignored the palace protocols and went directly to Kira's chambers. He found her sitting by her window, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the gardens with sad eyes. You shouldn't be here, she said without turning around. It's not proper for you to see me like this. Like what? Ben sat down beside her chair. Ugly. Shameful. Weak. Kira's voice was barely a whisper. Ben gently turned her chair so she was facing him. Kira, look at me. She reluctantly met his eyes. You are not ugly, Ben said firmly. You are not shameful. And you are certainly not weak. You are beautiful, inside and out, no matter what color your scales are. But the traditions say dash. The traditions are wrong, Ben interrupted. In human culture, we have a saying, true beauty comes from within. Your kindness, your intelligence, your curiosity about the universe, those things make you beautiful. The color of your skin is just decoration. Kira stared at him in amazement. You really believe that? I know it, Ben said. And I'll prove it to you. For the next week, Ben spent every possible moment with Kira. He brought her books from his ship about human art and culture. He told her stories about Earth's oceans and mountains. He sang her human songs, even though his voice wasn't particularly good. Most importantly, he treated her exactly the same as he had when her scales were bright and colorful. He listened to her opinions, asked for her advice, and shared his dreams with her just as before. Why are you doing this? Kira asked one evening as Ben helped her walk through the gardens for some fresh air. Because I care about you, Ben said simply. And because you deserve to know that your worth doesn't depend on how you look. Other species who had diplomatic relationships with Velthra began to visit the palace, curious about the unusual courtship. Ambassador Thrix, a tall being with silver skin from the planet Androxa, spoke privately with Kira one day. Princess, I must warn you about humans, Thrix said, his metallic voice cold and logical. They are unpredictable creatures driven by emotion rather than reason. Today this Ben may claim to care for you, but tomorrow his feelings may change. Humans rarely form lasting partnerships. Ambassador Vela from the crystalline world of Zirian agreed. My people have studied human behavior for decades. They form intense attachments quickly, but these feelings fade just as quickly. You would be wise to end this courtship before you are hurt. But as the days passed, Kira saw no evidence of changing feelings in Ben. If anything, he seemed to care more about her welfare than ever before. He learned simple Velthran songs to sing to her when she felt tired. He studied their medical texts to understand her condition better. He even convinced the palace cooks to prepare foods from Earth that might help her regain her strength. Slowly, gradually, Kira's scales began to show faint hints of color again. The palace doctor said it was because her emotional stress was decreasing, but Kira knew the truth. She felt peaceful and safe when Ben was near. His genuine care and acceptance had healed something inside her that she hadn't even realized was broken. On the 20th day of their courtship, as they sat together watching the sunset paint the crystal gardens in shades of gold and pink, Kira made a discovery that changed everything. "Ben," she said softly, her scales now showing clear purple and gold patterns again. "Yes. I think I'm beginning to understand what humans call love." Ben turned to look at her, hope and joy shining in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I don't want this courtship to end," Kira said, her scales brightening to the most beautiful colors Ben had ever seen. "I want to learn everything about your world, your people, and most of all, about you." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky above them, Ben realized that what had started as a diplomatic accident was becoming the most important relationship of his life. There were still 10 days left in the courtship period, but he already knew what his answer would be. The question was whether Princess Kira would feel the same way when the time came to choose. The 30th day of the courtship period arrived with unusual weather on Velthora. Storm clouds gathered around the crystal moon, creating dramatic patterns of light and shadow across the palace grounds. Ben stood at his window, watching the lightning dance between the clouds, feeling as nervous as he had ever been in his life. Today he would have to make his final decision about the life partnership with Princess Kira. More importantly, she would have to make her decision about him. The past 30 days had been the most wonderful and terrifying month of his life. A gentle chime announced a visitor. High Advisor Zen entered, but he was not alone. Behind him walked several other advisors that Ben recognized from various diplomatic meetings throughout his stay. "Good morning, Captain Torres," Zen said formally. "We have come to escort you to the decision chamber." Ben nodded, straightening his best uniform. "Is Princess Kira already there?" "She is preparing separately, according to our traditions," explained Advisor Mira, whose silver scales indicated her high rank in the court. "You will each be given the opportunity to speak before the assembled court. Then the final choice must be made." As they walked through the crystal corridors, Ben noticed that the palace seemed fuller than usual. Beings from many different worlds had arrived to witness this historic moment. He recognized some of the ambassadors who had spoken with Kira during her illness, along with others he had never seen before. "Word of your unusual courtship has spread throughout the galaxy," Zen explained quietly. "Many species are curious to see whether a human and a Velthoran can truly form a lasting bond." They entered the great ceremony hall where Ben had first met the royal family. The circular room was packed with observers from dozens of different worlds. Ben saw tall, graceful beings with feathered wings, short creatures with crystalline bodies, and others whose forms he could barely comprehend. At the center of the room stood a new platform, smaller than the one where the original ceremony had taken place. King Aldris and Queen Nala sat on their crystal thrones, their expressions serious and formal. "Captain Ben Torres of Earth," King Aldris announced, his voice echoing throughout the hall. "Approach and state your final decision regarding the life partnership with our daughter, Princess Kira." Ben walked to the center platform, aware that hundreds of eyes were watching his every move. He had rehearsed this moment many times, but now that it was here, he felt his prepared words disappearing from his mind. He looked up at King Aldris and Queen Nala, then at the crowd of beings from across the galaxy. Finally, he spoke from his heart. "Your Majesties, honored guests, I stand before you today as a human who came to Velthora seeking friendship between our peoples. I never expected to find something far more precious than any trade agreement or political alliance." He paused, gathering his thoughts. 30 days ago, I caught Princess Kira not because I understood your customs, but because every instinct I possessed told me to protect someone who was in danger. That same instinct has guided me through this courtship period." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ben could see some of the alien ambassadors shaking their heads or making gestures of disapproval. "I have learned about Velthoran culture, and I am amazed by your people's wisdom, peace, and commitment to knowledge. But I have also learned about Princess Kira as an individual. I have discovered her curiosity about the universe, her kindness toward others, her brilliant mind, and her brave heart. Ben's voice grew stronger as he continued. In human culture, we believe that love is not just a feeling that happens to you. Love is a choice you make every day. It is a promise to grow together, to support each other, and to build something beautiful that neither person could create alone. The hall had grown completely silent. Even the storm outside seemed to pause as Ben spoke. Princess Kira asked me once why humans are so emotional. The answer is that we feel deeply because we choose to feel deeply. We do not love because it is logical or convenient or politically useful. We love because we recognize something precious and irreplaceable in another soul. He turned to face the side entrance where he knew Princess Kira would appear. I formally declare my intention to honor the life partnership with Princess Kira, not because diplomatic law requires it, but because I choose her freely, with my whole heart, for all the days of my life. The crowd erupted in various sounds of surprise, approval, and dismay. Some aliens seemed pleased by his declaration, while others appeared troubled by his emotional approach. King Aldris raised his hand for silence. Princess Kira will now give her response. The side doors opened, and Princess Kira entered the hall. She looked magnificent in a gown that seemed to be woven from starlight itself. Her scales had returned to their full vibrant colors, shifting through purple, gold, and pink as she moved with graceful confidence. She walked to the platform and stood beside Ben, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her scales. For a moment, she looked directly into his eyes, and Ben saw something there that made his heart race with hope. Honored guests, Princess Kira began, her voice clear and strong. 30 days ago, I participated in the choosing ceremony expecting to be paired with someone selected for political reasons. I had resigned myself to a partnership based on duty rather than personal connection. She turned slightly to look at Ben. But the universe had different plans. Her scales brightened as she continued. During this courtship period, I have learned about human culture and human nature. I have discovered that while other species view partnerships as contracts or arrangements for mutual benefit, humans see them as adventures to be shared. Princess Kira faced the crowd directly. When I became ill with scale fade, many of you advised me to end the courtship. You said that a human's feelings would be temporary, that Ben would lose interest when I no longer appeared beautiful by our standards. She paused, her scales shifting to a determined gold. You were wrong. Ben felt his chest tighten with emotion as Kira spoke about their time together. Ben Torres stayed beside me when I was weak. He told me I was beautiful when I felt ashamed. He treated me with the same respect and kindness whether my scales were bright or dull. He showed me what humans call unconditional love. Ambassador Thrix from Androxa stood up, his metallic voice cutting through the air. Princess, romantic feelings are unpredictable. How can you trust something so unstable as human emotion? Princess Kira's scales flashed with what Ben now recognized as annoyance. Ambassador Thrix, you speak of emotions as if they are weaknesses. But I have learned that human emotions are their greatest strength. Humans do not just feel love, they choose to act on love every single day. She gestured toward Ben. This human learned my language to communicate better with me. He studied our medical texts to understand my illness. He sang me songs from his world to comfort me when I was sad. These were not automatic responses, they were conscious choices made out of care for my welfare. Queen Nala leaned forward on her throne. And what is your decision, my daughter? Princess Kira turned to face Ben fully. Ben Torres of Earth, you asked me once what I thought about our unexpected situation. I told you that perhaps the universe knew something we did not. Her scales began to cycle through the most beautiful colors Ben had ever seen, deep purples blending into warm golds, soft pinks flowing into brilliant blues. I now understand what the universe was trying to teach us. Love is not something that happens to you, it is something you build together. Other species have shown me partnerships based on logic, convenience, or political advantage. But you have shown me something I never knew existed, love chosen freely, given generously, and renewed daily through countless small acts of care. Ben felt tears forming in his eyes as Kira continued. I accept the life partnership with Ben Torres, not because ancient laws require it, but because I choose him freely, with my whole heart, for all the days of my life. The hall exploded with sound as beings from across the galaxy reacted to her decision. Some cheered, others argued, and a few simply sat in stunned silence. King Aldris stood from his throne, his own scales bright with joy. Then by the ancient laws of Velthora and the free choice of two hearts, let the bonding ceremony begin. What followed was the most beautiful celebration Ben had ever experienced. Velthoran musicians played harmony with instruments from a dozen different worlds. The crystal formations in the hall resonated with the music, creating sounds like nothing Ben had ever heard. As tradition required, Ben and Kira spoke vows to each other in both English and Velthoran. Ben promised to explore the universe with Kira as his partner, to support her dreams, and to love her more each day than the day before. Kira vowed to share her world with Ben, to learn about his people, and to build a life together that honored both their cultures. When they exchanged the traditional Velthoran bonding crystals, stones that would glow with shared warmth whenever they were together, Ben felt a completeness he had never experienced before. But the most meaningful moment came after the formal ceremony, when Ambassador Vela from Zirion approached them privately. I must admit, I was wrong about humans, she said, her crystalline voice tinkling like wind chimes. I told Princess Kira that human feelings were temporary and unreliable. But watching you both today, I see something different. She gestured toward the mixed crowd of beings celebrating together. Other species form alliances based on mutual advantage. Some create partnerships for genetic compatibility. A few arrange marriages for political reasons. But I have never seen two beings choose each other simply because they want to grow together. Ambassador Thrix joined the conversation, his silver skin reflecting the crystal light. Perhaps there is wisdom in the human approach to relationships. On Androxa, we mate based on logical compatibility assessments. We have stable partnerships, but I wonder if we have missed something important. As the celebration continued late into the night, Ben and Kira stood together on a balcony overlooking the crystal gardens. The storm had passed, and the two suns of Velthora were setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Are you happy? Ben asked, taking Kira's hand in his. Happier than I ever imagined possible, she replied, her scales glowing with soft gold warmth. But I am also curious about something. What's that? How do humans celebrate marriages on Earth? Ben laughed. Well, that's going to require a much longer explanation. But I have the rest of our lives to show you. As they stood together watching the stars appear in the darkening sky, Ben realized that what had begun as a diplomatic mission had become something far greater. Their partnership would serve as proof that different species could not only work together, but love together. 6 months later, the first cultural exchange program between Earth and Velthora was established. A year after that, 3 other species requested similar programs, curious to learn about the human approach to relationships and cooperation. But for Ben and Kira, the greatest discovery was not the impact their love had on galactic politics. It was the daily joy of waking up each morning and choosing to love each other all over again, building their forever one day at a time.